So my OBS should now be recording. Yeah, so this is offensive Entosis. I'm gonna cover the basics of Entosising, where you can Entosis, what you can Entosis, some methods of doing so, whether you want to do that solo in a small group, or if that's going to be part of a fleet, which might get taken out at some point. Hopefully this shouldn't take too long. I'll send some links and we'll go from there. Just give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. So, alright. So the basics of Entosis are as follows. Your ship will have a Entosis link I fitted onto your ship. That will look something like what I have just posted in the fleet. It has some requirements of Informal Psychology too, but if you have jump clones, you probably have all those requirements met. You're going to put that module onto a ship. It doesn't matter what ship, except for interceptors and capital ships get a delay on how long the Entosis link cycles for. So there's that, but pretty much all subcaps are fine for using Entosis links on. The Entosis link uses fuel, which is strontium, so that's really cheap to get around here. Yeah, so how it's going to work, you're going to go to a system. I'm just going to link an example system in the chat. And if you do show information on that system and then go to the sovereignty tab, you'll see that the sovereign alliance is fraternity. As you currently know, we are at war with them. The non-invasion pact ended a few days ago, so yeah, we're pretty much at war with them now. On the sovereignty tab, you'll see two different parts. You'll see the TCU and the iHub, and next to them you'll see the vulnerability windows, and that's going to be in Eve time. So you'll see that their vulnerability time is from 5:30 AM to 2:30 PM. That means that you can only like Entosis those structures at that time, and the structure you Entosis, it does matter to an extent. So the TCU, the Territorial Claim Unit, is basically the thing that says who owns that space. So in this case it says fraternity, but if someone else was to successfully Entosis it and carry it through the reinforcement, that TCU would be destroyed. Then someone else from another alliance can come and anchor one, and then that system will belong to that other alliance. The iHub, on the other hand, is where all the system upgrades get put in. So that's the ratting upgrades, the mining upgrades, the industry upgrades. So if you reinforce that, I believe it takes them all offline. That means if you manage to Entosis the iHub, that's gonna turn off all those services. So they might lose access to super capital production depending on the system, or they might lose access to some mining anomalies or routing anomalies. So in theory you can cause a fair bit of trouble for them if you manage to successfully Entosis them. Any questions at this point? I'll take that as a no. Alright, moving on. So I'm going to talk about two different types of Entosising. One is going to be troll Entosising, and the other one is going to be fleet Entosis. So troll Entosis, I've kind of split it up into two types. There's suicide Entosis, where you'll get a ship, any ship, fit a Entosis link on it, and start Entosising whatever iHub or TCU you like. Your goal isn't really to survive or to finish the timer. It's more of, hey, I pinged your alliance, because once you start intosing the iHub or the TCU after the first 5 minutes, which is the warm-up cycle where nothing happens, after the first 5 minutes it basically sends a ping to the entire alliance saying so and so from whatever alliance is intosing this structure, go stop them. So it can be a good way of just poking the enemies and making them form, basically, because they will need to send people after you to either kill you or push you off. So an example of one ship that I've used is a Punisher. Let me try to find a fit. So this is my Punisher. It's not meant to be a serious fit. So what we have on here is we have the Entosis link, and we have a cloak, we have a prop mod, and the lows are filled with overdrive injectors that basically increases our velocity. So the idea is to start the Entosis cycle once the first 5 minutes are done. As soon as the second cycle starts, you start burning away, and you're going to quickly burn out of range of your Entosis link, but that doesn't matter, because with this type of Entosing you just want to annoy the enemy. It's important to note that while the Entosis link is cycling, even if you red cycle it, you can't warp away or you can't cloak. So you're basically stuck on grid until the Entosis link cycles down completely. So this is why once the warm-up is complete, you'll start burning away. The idea is that if you burn away quick enough and for long enough, by the time the enemies respond, you'll be too far off for them to want to chase you down. So this ship goes 3.7k meters per second. So if they leave you alone for a minute, you're going to be able to cover almost 200k, and then if anyone else lands on grid, they might not be bothered to chase you down. And if they do catch you, you're probably going to die because you have no guns or anything defensive to help protect you. But to me that doesn't matter too much, because the ship only costs like 12 or 13 million. So they're quite expendable, and you can like lose them and it annoys the enemy.
Is it actually possible with this ship to actually Entosis one of their nodes?
Yes, and that also depends who you're Entosing against. So I've tried to Entosis skill yourself before. So I was able to get through the warm-up cycle. I was in an ADM1 system. I was about a minute away from finishing my second cycle, which means I would have reinforced the structure. But then they showed on grid, and at that point I had not much choice, because I knew I wouldn't be able to survive long enough to finish the cycle. So I basically burnt away. I managed to get away and they didn't chase me. So it's possible to do so, but also relies on the enemies being a bit slow or slow to respond to you, which is quite unlikely. My experience with Fraternity, which has only been one time, they responded really quickly. Once the warm-up cycle was done, they showed in system within a minute. So probably about 30-40 seconds into the cycle they showed in local, and then the next couple of seconds they were on grid, and they bought frigates, they bought interceptors to basically chase me down. So it is possible. So it depends on which ADM system you're going for. So low ADM systems are key. So if you're going for an ADM1 system, you only need to run the Entosis sync for 2 cycles in total. An ADM2 system, you'll need to run it for, I think, 3 cycles in total. So it does get longer, and each cycle is 5 minutes. So you're potentially going to be on grid for a minimum of 10 minutes.
So you start burning away as soon as they spike local, or
so I start burning away once the second cycle starts. So that means that the alliance gets pinged, and by doing so you also burn out of range of your Entosis link. So if you want to try actually reinforce the iHub or the TCU, you don't want to burn away, you just want to sit at your maximum range. So the range of a T1 Entosis link is 20 kilometers. So you want to sit around there, and then if people show on grid, that's when you want to start burning away, and if you don't think you'll be able to finish it in time.
Okay.
Then the other type of, I guess, troll Entosing is fighting while you're Entosing. So I guess this would be more suitable for slightly bigger ships, or maybe battle cruisers, where you'll fit an Entosis link. You will begin Entosis, and you would fit your ship for combat. You would begin cycling on the node. Once the first cycle finishes, they get pinged, they try to stop you. They'll probably bring small ships, so frigates, destroyers, and then if you're fit for combat, and if you're fit to fight small ships, you can start fighting them. Chances are, depending on how you're fit, you might be able to kill them and push them off, meaning that you could finish off your whole Entosis cycle, meaning you get to reinforce their structures. That obviously costs a bit more money because you'll need a proper combat fit, and it's more skill intensive as well. But it also guarantees some sort of a fight, even if it's against just frigates and destroyers, because pretty much all of the time they will send people to stop you, so it means that you will always be able to get a fight. I know Futility in Brave did something similar in, I think, NC or PL space, where he managed to get a few kills before they killed him, and he did the same thing. He just trolled Entosis their structures. Now, if you're wondering where you can Entosis people, so obviously don't Entosis anyone in Legacy, because they're allies. Don't Entosis goons. There's some other people as well who I can't remember, but just check with a Diplo before you Entosis anyone. But Fraternity, Skill Yourself are pretty much fair game. You can go for them all you want. Now some of the space that they own. I've just sent a bunch of links in the chat. So one of the regions Fraternity own is Wicked Creek. They own most of the sovereignty in this system, more or less all of it. The ADMs are pretty high in this region. They're all above 2, which means you'll be on grid for a minimum. If you reinforce the structure, you'll be on grid for a minimum of 15 minutes. I don't recommend trying to Entosis those systems because it's unlikely without support that you'll make it through. Detorid, again, was mostly owned by Fraternity. If you check the ADMs, again the ADMs are still mostly above 2, and there's one 1.9 system which doesn't belong to them, so you can probably still go after them. Endless Crew, yeah, I'm they're not friendly with us, so you can probably go for them as well. Scolding Pass, some fraternity space, high ADMs once again. With Scolding Pass, you're next door to NPC space, so HTAC and ESTAC. And these systems both have stations in them where you can store ships. Getting there, you'll probably need to use a jump freighter. So you can store some ships in there and then go for small roams out into their space to start Entosing stuff. Innsmother is pretty much all skill yourself. All the light blue bit on the map would be skill yourself. Again, for ADMs, they've got quite a lot of one ADM systems because they're not utilizing a lot of their space. Skill yourself are decent at responding. They're not as fast as Fraternity. So they're also our enemies in this war, since they have helped Fraternity in the past. So those guys are also fair game to Entosis.
Is there any strategic advantage of reinforcing their systems besides of them maybe losing rating anomalies or mining anomalies?
If you reinforce it, it also makes them form. So if you manage to reinforce the node, they will need to form the day after to Entosis nodes to basically take back that structure. So it's going to make them form, and it's low level harassment, and it can start to play mind games if you do it enough. If you start hitting random systems and it pings them every time, it can get annoying and they might not bother responding, or if you keep running away, they'll think, yeah, that person's not gonna actually reinforce the structure, but then one day you might decide to, or they don't respond, and then you happen to reinforce it. So it's a lot of mind games. So especially in wars, a lot of the stuff is about mind games and making the enemies think that they're not as safe as they are.
But they are not actually losing the space to us.
No, they wouldn't actually lose the space. If you do manage to reinforce a high iHub or a TCU in a solo or with a small group, I'm not sure where to actually announce it. I guess war updates would be a good place, and maybe contact some FCs or maybe message Shattered Armor to let him know that you've done something. Then maybe if someone wants to take either a fun fleet, or even if a FC wants to take out a proper fleet to contest them, then that might happen. And if we do manage to take a system or contest the timer and make them lose it, if they quote unquote lose the system, even if we don't put down our own structure, it can cause a bit of havoc inside the alliance, because people might start thinking, oh, we're going to lose our space, and so on. Moving on to fleet Entosising. I've just sent a link, and that is a link to our military page with our Entosis boat doctrines. So some of the ships we use are clowns. Those are Nereasis and Sigils. These are passive regen ships. You have bricks, so these are prophecies and drakes. Armor tank prophecies, shield tanked drakes, zippos, which are stalks and bifrosts. So the Storks and Bifrosts are good, even though if they are a bit more expensive than the others, because they can fit a micro jump field generator, meaning if enemies get close to them, they can basically jump away and delay the enemies in getting to them. So with fleet intosising, how it is likely to work, or how it does work, is the FC will take out a fleet, sorry. They'll call a small doctrine, so that would probably be something like Harpies, something small and fast. Harpies interceptors would probably be welcome, and Logi ships. You'll go out to whichever systems. The Entosis boats usually go to different comms, and they talk to one of the FCs, or they talk to someone, and they basically spread out in the systems. Then what the rest of the fleet does is wait until one of the Entosis people notices that there might be a threat, that they may start to get shot at, whether that's like an enemy fleet responding, or even if it's just a few people. Then the main fleet will move to that system and drive off the attackers. And this basically continues until we manage to reinforce the systems or win over the timer, whichever it happens to be. Just to reiterate, it's going to be fast doctrines, so Harpies, interceptors, not necessarily always kitey Entosis boats, so the Nereus and the Sigil aren't very speedy themselves, but they do have a lot of passive regen, so they can tank a decent amount of damage. The same with the Prophecy and the Drake. They're not as fast, but they do soak up a lot of damage, and that's what they're fit for. They can use the micro jump drive to basically get out of range of any enemies, to buy them more time for the main fleet to get into system to help them out. Because if the entire fleet of even 50 people lands on grid, whoever's trying to drive you off, if it's just 1 or 2 people, probably don't want to be dealing with that, and they'll probably just run away. And then the Zippos, so the Storks and the Bifrosts, these are the fast ones. They use the MGD to get away. They reach the maximum speed you can with an Entosis link activated, which is 4 kilometers per second. Meaning that don't need fast ships, they'll basically need interceptors, maybe some assault frigates to catch you. And they also rely on the T2 Entosis links, which have a larger range, and they also cycle quicker, so you're only going to have to wait 2 minutes between cycles, meaning that if an enemy fleet lands, it's more likely that you'll be able to get off grid. These ones also come fit with Sinos, so if the FC asks, they might ask you to buy a Sino, depending on the situation. And I think that covers it all, or most of it. Yeah. Any questions? Anything you'd like me to cover again?
You said there are bigger ships, better cruisers, and so on that are good against the small stuff that would initially be there. So that sounds a bit like content creator. I'm Entosing in a better cruiser. Small gang response in frigates and destroyers, and I could get a decent fight out of it, right? While running away, they chase me. Low transversal, so couldn't I just shoot them in the face?
With the battle cruiser, because battle cruisers usually aren't as fast as frigates and destroyers, you might just be better off holding the Entosis link, so to keep your Entosis going. Because if you do manage to kill off that small gang, you can probably finish off your Entosis cycles to reinforce the structures. So like you can orbit you probably could orbit whatever you're trying to Entosis to give you a bit of transversal, but with a battle cruiser, I don't think it'll make that much of a difference. So you can probably just like sit still and shoot them in the face, and then if you die, you die. If you don't, oh well. Like it's content in the end, so it can be a way to get content. Or even if you wanted to take out like if you and a few other people, so one person might go in a battle cruiser and everyone else sits outside of the system, then when enemies land on grid, the rest of the group jumps in with destroyers, frigates, sabers, and then they whoop to you and basically start fighting. And it's something that anyone can do. You don't need to be specifically trained to use Entosis links. You just need to be able to get somewhere and start Entosising. Any other questions? Alright, I'll take that as a no. Alright, I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on Slack and I'll answer them.
Thank you for giving that class.
Thank you guys.